today's video, I'm going to give my 5 biggest tips for any high-ticket dropshipper, whether you are a beginner or a seasoned veteran. This is just based purely on my own experience and what I've seen succeed and not succeed over the years. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. My first tip would be to know your products. This might seem super obvious, but knowing your products in and out is going to help you on so many levels. For one thing, it's going to allow you to actually provide value to your customer. If your customer calls with a technical question or whatever question it might be, depending on the product niche that you have, being armed with the product knowledge, which really comes with time and experience, will put you in such a good position to not only provide value and information that's helpful to the customer, but also to close sales over the phone. Your ability to be knowledgeable and helpful to the customer over the phone is so unbelievably massive for your conversion rate. So that's one layer of it. Another layer of it is actually knowing how to organize your product pages and lay out your website in a way that is intuitive and helpful for the particular customer demographic that you're serving. So having a list of frequently asked questions, or knowing which common questions customers are going to ask the most, and putting those exact pieces of information right at the very top of the product page so a customer could land on your product page and know exactly everything that they need to know about that product within 30 seconds of being on your website. Knowing your products in depth will serve you well over the phone with customers. It'll serve you well as you design and update and improve your website over time. And really, on a human personal level, it is really fulfilling to actually provide value to the people that you're serving and not just treating them as numbers or not just treating them as revenue. You know, the way that I go about my high-ticket dropshipping business and the way that I espouse it to other people is that, you know, this is a career that I take very seriously and I really enjoy the human interaction piece of it. So that's number 1, know your products. And this actually segues pretty well into number 2, which is be intentional with your website. It is so common nowadays in e-commerce to hire freelancers to just bulk upload products without any thought given to the actual design and layout of your website. This used to work in the early days of e-commerce when there was way less competition, when it took way less effort just to sell products. You didn't really have to give a whole lot of thought to it, but now there's more competition and it becomes harder and harder with time for your website and your business to stand out amongst the rest, no matter what niche you're in. And so even though it's painstaking, even though it's not the most fun job in the world, paying close attention to every little detail on your website is going to help you so much in the long run. And this is something that is dynamic. This is something that is, for me to this day, it's constantly improving and constantly changing. So whether it's the optimization of your product page layout, whether it's your website's navigation, whether it's the infographics that you have, it is in your best interest to give your customers every bit of an impression that you are worth paying attention to as a business when they land on your website, from your branding all the way down to your information organization. Be intentional with your website and you will stand out amongst the crowd. Number 3, I think, is kind of a slept on one, and that is to value and respect your supplier relationships. Having good relationships with your suppliers is so astronomically huge. And there are several reasons for this. Kind of going back to what I mentioned in number 1, the human aspect of having a good relationship with your suppliers is so fulfilling. Just a personal anecdote, I actually got lunch with my best-selling supplier, their president, a few weeks ago. He was passing through town. He reached out to me to ask if I wanted to get lunch. We had never actually met in person. We got lunch. Awesome guy. I've had a great relationship with him and his company for the past few years. And I finally got to meet him in person, and I think either later this summer or in the fall, my wife and I are going to go out and visit them at their location and actually meet his wife and his kids and just have a whole weekend of an event. So that's one piece of it, the human aspect. The business aspect of it, having a good relationship with your supplier. The short of it is that if you have a good relationship and you have a good track record with them, they are much more willing to do favors for you, whether it's expediting an order, whether it is, you know, pulling strings that they wouldn't normally pull for any other dealer. There's really an infinite list of things that having a good relationship with your supplier will provide you from a business standpoint and from an advantageous standpoint as far as serving customers and providing good customer service. Point being, from the moment you reach out to a prospective supplier to sending them your first purchase order, be respectful, be reliable, and believe me, they do not need you. you need them much more than they need you. Number 4 in my tips for all high-ticket dropshippers is to lean into what's working. Now, this might sound obvious, but what I mean by this is to, whether you set out to sell greenhouses or whether you set out to sell fire pits, if you have both on your website, which I wouldn't recommend because they're not very related, and coming from my own experience where I had both on my initial website, I didn't come off as an authority in either space. But if you notice that one is selling more than the other, or a product type that you didn't even intend to sell is listed on your website and is selling way more than everything else, lean into that product. Even if you set out with the initial goal to sell greenhouses, but greenhouses are not selling, fire pits are, lean into fire pits. The goal is to make money. So even if what is selling is not by design, my genuine advice, and this is what changed my entire career as a high-ticket dropshipper, is to pivot as you need to and lean into what's working. Don't resist it, go with the flow. Pay attention to what's driving revenue and lean into that. Number 5 kind of summarizes all of this, and that is to focus on quality over quantity. Having met many people in the e-commerce and high-ticket dropshipping space, I know a very common practice is to make as many high-ticket dropshipping websites as possible and run ads for all of them and hire a virtual assistant to handle customer service for all of them. And that is certainly one way to do it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that way. For me personally, and what's provided me a lot of fulfillment and has really allowed my business to grow tremendously, is by pouring my focus into my business, knowing my products in and out, creating great relationships with my suppliers. What has been really fulfilling for me in my time as a high-ticket dropshipper is building a business, building a brand, and having it at a point where it's actually a recognized brand and a reputable business in the space that I'm in. That's not for everybody. I'm not saying that's required, but providing good customer service, having those human interactions, that is what I personally prefer for me. It served me well from a financial standpoint, and it's going to continue to serve me well because now my business is at a point where it stands head and shoulders above a lot of others. One day I might sell my business, but in the meantime, my aspirations are to continue to grow it and to continue to improve it. And that's what is personally very fulfilling for me. So I guess my overarching point for other people would be to focus on the quality of each individual business that you start or each individual store that you start online before you just expand and make a bunch of them. Generally, those types of stores are not going to provide nearly as much value to people or nearly as good of customer service from a personable or expertise standpoint. But also, e-commerce is so competitive now that if you aren't dedicating focus and attention and excellent customer care to your business, it's much harder to get ahead unless you are in a completely untouched niche, of which there are frankly very few in this day and age. We live in a time where it is very possible to make a very large income online. High-ticket dropshipping is no exception to this, but we also live in a day and age where everybody wants to start a business online, and really only those that put forth the most effort and pay attention to their data and pay attention to their customers the most are going to prevail as successful businesses. So there you have it. Those are the 5 tips of many. Maybe I'll make another video like this because I have a lot of advice that I could give out just based on my own experience. Those are 5 really big pieces of advice that I would offer up to any high-ticket dropshipper or any aspiring high-ticket dropshipper. As always, let me know in the comments if there are any topics that you guys want me to go into depth about. It's really helpful for me as far as coming up with content ideas to just to know what kind of headspace you guys are in, what part of the journey you guys are on with your e-commerce, or if it's just from a sheer curiosity standpoint. And also, if you haven't, check out my course. I do have a course for high-ticket dropshippers. I'll put the link in the description below. But other than that, like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.